Hello and welcome back to the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Examined. I'm your host, John Malanca. Thank you for joining us for episode 5, Accessing the Sacred Plant, the Unjust Laws and How to Navigate Them. I am grateful that you're here and learning this vital information so you're empowered to help yourself and your loved ones. An extra special heartfelt thank you to those who purchased the series. It gives you an amazing resource to own for life and the ability to give it to someone you care about. Your support also allows us to continue sharing this for free and to help even more people in need. In episode 4, we look at the ways that the Sacred Plant works against cancer. We heard from cancer survivors Olivia Newton-John and Shannon Ajluni about using the Sacred Plant during cancer treatment. And we witnessed the final chapter in my dear friends Mike and Callie Hyde's battle to save their son Cashy Hyde. In today's episode, Accessing the Sacred Plant, the Unjust Laws and How to Navigate Them, we examine the changing landscape of medical cannabis regulations all over the United States. We travel from Maine to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maryland, and to Florida to see firsthand how the medical programs have rolled out in those states. And we look closely at my home state of California to discover what the growing adult market means for medical patients. We follow the seed-to-sale journey of cannabis from the growing facilities to dispensaries as well as wellness centers. You will see how the raw plant is turned into medicinal oils and tinctures and how the plant is tested for safety. We'll meet incredible patient activists who are winning the fight to get everyone legal access to the Sacred Plant.
We have a good list of conditions in Maine, meaning that most of the things for which I would want to treat a patient, I'm able to do so. I still really disagree with the concept of a list of conditions. Policymakers should not be telling doctors how to practice. It should be, if you've evaluated the risks and benefits of cannabis in this patient and you think that the potential benefits outweigh the risks, go ahead and treat them. So right now, if someone comes to me with anxiety that does not have PTSD or chronic pain, for example, I'm not allowed to treat them with cannabis. I can't give them a certificate. I can teach them how to use cannabis. They can go get it because it's so easy to access here, but I can't make it legal for them to purchase it by giving them a certificate. Same thing with depression, for example. Again, if they're depressed and that's their only condition, I'd love to treat them with cannabis. I think it's safer and more effective than most of the other pharmacologic options for depression. Maine is a really interesting place for medical cannabis. So we've had a law here since 1999, and then that law was expanded in 2009 to include a type of cannabis producer called a caregiver. And so a caregiver is someone that's licensed by the state to provide cannabis for up to 5 patients beside themselves. And so what I've seen happen working in this environment since 2009 has been a patient will come in. I'll recommend cannabis to them. They'll find a caregiver who will be able to supply it. Then I see them, say, 6 months later, and they say, oh, now my caregiver's starting to teach me how to grow it for myself. And then I see them 6 or 12 months after that, and they say, oh, now my caregiver's actually teaching me to become a caregiver. And then I see them for their follow-up visit, and now they're helping other patients. And it's this beautiful progression that includes empowerment and economic development. Right? So now in Maine, about 9 years after that law passed, we have over 3,000 caregivers in the state.
When we first became caregivers, my wife was actually a caregiver first, prior to me becoming a caregiver, because I was just a patient. I was disabled with syringomyelia, a neurological disorder. It's a fluid-filled sac within my spinal cord. It goes from T1 to T9. And that causes the neurological disorders and the reason I was on all the pharmaceutical stuff. The cannabis really helped with that condition. And knowing that it helped with my conditions, I couldn't just keep it for myself. And the gentleman that taught me how to grow really well.
When we first started, he was growing the flower, but then once you had the flower, what do you do with it other than smoke it? And that was where I got interested in learning about the tinctures and the lozenges. And I started trying to make things that would help Glenn in his symptom control. And we started off with an alcohol tincture. Well, that was the only thing I knew how to do. he's a recovering alcoholic, so alcohol is not the best method. So then we went to learn about the glycerin tinctures, and then we learned about the MCT coconut oil tinctures, and the lozengers became a big hit with a lot of patients because it was a slow ingestion process, and we could make it, mild, medium, or strong. Now we are able to get things tested, so we know that we have a 5 milligram lozenger or a 100 milligram lozenger. So everything that we are able to offer and has changed and improved. So we have flour, we have tinctures, we have lozengers, we have edibles. Transdermal pain patches are the newest thing that we just started working with for people who don't want to smoke and people who need to be able to have consistent pain relief or symptom control. So there's a lot of different things that this community can offer patients now. It's not just the actual flour in a jar.
There's 8 dispensaries in Maine. There's one in each geographic region. These dispensaries have been operating for 8 years or so. Very few of them are doing an adequate job, in my opinion. And I don't think that this is because they're bad companies. I think that they're actually trying really hard. But the burden that's placed upon them by the way the system is set up, where one company has to be the grower, the processor, and the retailer, and deal with every stage of this. They have to essentially be experts at every stage. That's really hard to accomplish.
They keep coming through the door. This, not just the cancer, not just the chronic pain, not just the seizures. It's just one thing after another, after another, after another. And for me, I don't understand. In Maine, we have a couple of the most advanced labs in the country, in the world, Jackson Lab. We could be doing research and leading the world in research on this plant and what it can benefit and how it can benefit people. But instead, we're worried about what it's going to generate in revenue for taxes for the state.
Or fearful of what the federal government's going to do.
Right.
This needs to be available to everybody. I can't imagine the patients in other states that don't even have a medical program. It's incomprehensible. We get calls from people in Florida, Arizona, Louisiana, and they're looking for help. South Carolina, we just got a call. Pennsylvania. Some of these states are starting to come on board, but many of them are nowhere near it. And these patients don't have access. And some of them are going to jail for trying to access a plant that can help them so greatly. And we hear it all the time. We see it on the news. Oh, that's anecdotal. There's no science to back it. Well, get the science caught up, because there is science to back it. We just have to go to Israel and Egypt and the UK. We should have that here in the United States. You want to make America great again? Get this research done, because it does so much for medicine, fiber, fuel, food. There's so many different things that this plant can help people with.
It's one of those things. If you can't get it, but it's helping you, and you know it helps you, and I know it's helping you, would it be ethical and moral of me as a physician to deny you that?
Yeah.
I mean, how on earth could I do that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just wrong even for me to say that.
Yeah.
Ethically and morally, I took an oath to do everything I can to take care of you. You found something that may not be mainstream, but it's helping you be operational. And I'm going to sit back and say, no, it's federally illegal, and, start reading you the Riot Act and the law.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not here. I'm not the police. I'm here to advocate for what's helping and working for you. That's why I'm here.
Unfortunately, one way that people are navigating the problem with this patchwork of state regulatory laws and programs, and they're always changing and evolving and so forth. One of the ways some people deal with this is simply to migrate to another state that has a better cannabis program. And of course, this isn't a realistic or sustainable option for most people. And so what I know people are doing is traveling to states where it's legal, either setting up a temporary residence there so they can be a part of the program, or working with a friend who might be bending or breaking the rules and accessing the program for them, giving them medicine, and then they're illegally transporting it home. So there's real risk involved in this, and you have to put that risk on the table and compare it with the risk of not having any cannabis treatment. And for some really desperate patients, there's no question about it. It's worth the risk. The other thing to do, which is a much slower process, but very effective, is to get involved, right? So this means start educating people, become an expert yourself, start talking to your neighbors, to your family, to your colleagues at work, start talking to your local Congress people and to your federal Congress people, and letting them know what you think. Sometimes it takes a lot of repetition, but over time that has an effect. And this is one way that we can help everyone else who's having the same problem as you, is to make change.
That got us involved with Dr. Sulak in fighting for plant rights at the state level, and how that has affected our lives is got us involved with lobbying, with understanding how legislation works, and the whole process of protecting this as a medicine, and the importance of what we have in our hands as a medicine. And it seems as if that the other side of the fence, the pharmaceutical side of the fence, really doesn't like what we're doing.
John Malanca with the Sacred Plant. We're here in Washington, D.C. with Steph Shearer, founder of Americans for Safe Access. So thank you, Steph, for jumping off a plane from Europe and being with us here today.
I was not a cannabis advocate at all. I actually am a medical cannabis patient, and that's what brought me into the movement. In 2000, I had an injury that I didn't recover from, and that's when I was diagnosed with a condition called dystonia. And it's an inflammation disorder, and I had to take quite a bit of anti-inflammatories, as well as pain medications, and my kidneys started failing. Side effects of the medication, not because of the illness. And my doctor and I, we tried all sorts of combinations of anti-inflammatories. And for my condition, without anti-inflammatories in my system, my body seizes up. So it's not really an option of whether or not I can, I take them. So one day, my doctor closed the door behind him and asked me if I smoke pot. And I told him no. And he asked me if I knew where to get some. And I just stared at him and I said, "Am I your youngest patient?" Because I thought he was trying to score weed from me. I had no idea why this was being brought up. And about that time, a friend of mine told me about these dispensaries in the Bay Area. And I called Berkeley Patients Group and asked them if I could come visit them. They said I just needed a recommendation from my doctor and to fax it ahead of time so they could verify it was really come from my doctor, and that I could come. So that experience was pretty life-changing. I didn't really know the difference between the different strains before that visit. I didn't know that you could take cannabis in other ways than just smoking it. And most excitingly, I had someone who would talk to me about what products I was about to buy. And it was a very dignified experience. I had a political consulting firm in San Diego, and I decided just to move it up to the Bay Area. So pretty big life change to move from San Diego to the Bay Area. And I was there for 2 months, and then there was a federal raid on one of the dispensaries in San Francisco. And it was actually Ed Rosenthal's bust. And that's when I realized that this was federally illegal, because it felt very legal, to go into one of these facilities. And at that time, that's when I realized that the people running the dispensaries were actually committing federal civil disobediences every day to provide people like me medicine. And I was just so moved and so honored, that people were taking this risk every day. And the truth is, today, people are still taking that risk. That still hasn't changed. And so I went to there were only 11 dispensaries at that time. I went to all of them and asked them what they were doing to protect themselves. And they said they were keeping their head down. And I said, I don't think you can keep your head down when you're selling cannabis to 40,000 people in a fixed location. And so I said, if this is really your commitment, then I will help build a movement to protect you, because safe access is the only way that people like me can use medical cannabis.
So what do you say for all the patients that don't have access who live in illegal states? You were fortunate that you lived in a state that was legal. My father-in-law was fortunate that he happens to live in a legal state, and his life is saved. He's alive still. Your life has been changed. So what do you say for the patients, and what are you doing for the patients that don't have access, that are in the situation you're in, and thousands and thousands of other patients like that?
So the work that we do here at American Safe Access is actually to pass laws state by state. So right now, as you know, 46 states, DC, Guam, Puerto Rico have passed laws. And that didn't just happen in a vacuum. It happened because individual patients decided to engage with their government to make these laws change. So what we do here is we actually train advocates on how to do citizen lobbying, how to review legislative proposals. We've created model legislation that we work with state by state to pass not only the first law that passes, but the cleanup legislation that's usually so important and still is important. We actually put out a report at the end of last year that's a blueprint for state legislatures to be able to improve their state laws so that more patients can be added to these programs. Most of these programs were written to try to keep as many people out as possible. And now, with the opioid crisis, we're saying it's actually time to look back at that and see actually how you can get as many patients in these programs as possible.
We just shared how the medical cannabis program works in Maine and the important grassroots work of Americans for Safe Access. The Sacred Plant Company makes financial donations to Americans for Safe Access and its international sister organization. Part of our mission includes helping to change legislation so that everyone can get safe and legal access to the plant to heal themselves and their loved ones. In episode 6, you'll learn how to get the benefits from the Sacred Plant even if you live in a CBD-only state. Now let's go to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maryland to see how their brand new programs are rolling out. Meet Brett and Keenan of Prime Alternative Treatment Center. Let's hear how the vertically integrated program in New Hampshire works.
Yeah, so being vertically integrated allows us to really bring to market the products that we think are going to be the most efficacious for our patients. So if we were just a retailer, we might not have products that contain the acidic cannabinoids. That's not something that is commonly available, although it's becoming more common. So, by allowing us to actually produce the products, we're able to really hone in on the things that we think are going to work best for the widest array of our patient base. So having that flexibility, having that option to produce something on a whim that we think might be effective gives us a lot of control, which we feel helps us serve our patient base to the best of our ability.
In addition, we notice that there's kind of the farmer's market style or more of a local kind of feel to things when you're producing it yourself. Everyone who enters this facility knows exactly who grew and who worked on, and many of them have gotten to meet our production staff during like our patient appreciation day and things like that.
Dr. Sulak has been an inspiration for myself and I think for other people in this company. He's a role model for us, and he's someone who's imparted a great deal of knowledge and information that has greatly influenced the way that we operate this facility. Taking what he kind of preaches and the way that he explains things and allowing our patients to kind of receive that same level of education or knowledge is a huge component of what we do. One of the biggest things that I learned from him was this idea of the optimal therapeutic dosage, and that oftentimes it was far less than what most people would believe. And that's something that we talk to every single patient about reducing their consumption for better efficacy. So being able to not only look up to, but also to work with somebody that is so knowledgeable, that's worked with thousands of patients himself and his other practitioners, has been just invaluable for us in the way that we operate. I don't think that we would have brought to market the acidic cannabinoid products as strongly as we did without his influence and without his guidance.
The tinctures have become more and more of a staple of what we actually dispense here, and there have been multiple reasons for it. The different combination of cannabinoids provided in a single source so that things are blended together properly for our patients to use in an easy manner, as well as the methods that he uses to find the correct dose.
If I wanted every one of my patients to be able to walk into a dispensary or a caregiver shop or a health food store and see a series of bottles or products on the shelf, what would I want them to have? What's minimally viable? And then what are the next steps after that to get better and better results? I think about it like this. We used to have these old radios, right? There was a big knob that was the tuning, and then there was a small knob for the fine tuning. Some people still remember this metaphor. The big knob in cannabis is how many milligrams of the active constituents is someone getting? Are they like 2 milligram person or a 10 milligram person? And we need some reliable products to figure that out. And then when we start talking about strain differences, this is like the fine tuning knob. We can help people get a little bit better results from certain strains. Once in a while there's a patient that just responds incredibly well, miraculously well to one strain that only gets kind of moderate to mild benefits from another. But in general, that fine tuning knob is really small changes that I find. So I'm looking at the profiles of the cannabinoids and terpenoids in these strains, and I'm selecting them based on their activities. Like, yes, this strain or these few strains over here, we're going to put them together to make our daytime formula. This group of strains over here will be our nighttime formula. Here's what we're going to do for health promotion and disease prevention. Here's what we're going to do for pain, for sleep, and so forth. And so we're getting these basic, 6 or 7 bottles on the shelf that just make it doable for patients, that make it simple, straightforward, consistent, reliable from one month to the next, and safe.
I think the name of the program, the compassionate use of medical marijuana, it really says it all, and we really want to keep compassion in the use of marijuana in Massachusetts. So I think we have a long way to go, and it's been a slow process, but we're getting good results through that sort of tedious process. And I think that if you look at Massachusetts, the history of Massachusetts, it was, we were settled by the Calvinists and puritanical people. And the ether dome at Mass General was controversial because pain was considered to be part of the human condition, and that suffering was part of what you accepted in your life. And so when ether was introduced and surgeries and dental work could then be, pain could be mitigated, that was controversial. So you have to understand when people say the old Yankee, when old Yankee is a stoic individual. And so we're trying to change part of the stigma. It's not only with cannabis, but part of the stigma is that people actually do suffer. And in 2018, why do people suffer? There's no reason for it. We know how to quell suffering. And so that's really a huge issue for me. And we are looking to have a world-class program in Massachusetts. But again, that takes time.
Our program is still very young, and we only have about probably 240 physicians right now on our dashboard, and maybe last week it was 220.
So part of the physician issue is that our physicians have to, as Nicole said, jump through a few hoops in order to be a recommending physician. And they don't write a prescription, they write a recommendation. It's botanical. And in this state, in Massachusetts, where we are among the leaders in the country when you think of academic institutions along with medical institutions, that number of physicians should be much higher. But the federal status of it being illegal at the federal level makes it difficult for physicians to step out and go ahead and do the recommending. I think there's a lot of referrals by physicians to recommending physicians, but there are not a lot of physicians stepping up. And you have to say this is a challenge for them because they work very hard and for their license. They spent a lot of money on their license. They could be totally pro-cannabis, but they don't want to take that step and start recommending it because there is that, sort of wobble at the federal level that makes people nervous. Because this program, again, was built on the needs of the patients that insisted on the compassionate use of medical marijuana. And so in a way, we are kind of telling the legislator what legislative body what we want, and we are doing it on behalf of 45,000 patients right now that are registered to use medicine and would like to use medicine, and those numbers skyrocket when we really start thinking about as more dispensaries are added, that number skyrockets. So that's who we work for.
Hi, this is John Malanka with the Sacred Plant, and today we are in Maryland at the Grassroots Cultivation and Processing Center. We're going to give you a tour of where your medicine comes from, so follow us.
Hey there, I'm Gabe Farrow, the Cultivation Manager for Grassroots Maryland. Let's go take a tour.
Let's do it. So we're in the testing area here at Grassroots, and we have an independent testing lab, which is Steep Hill of Maryland, which is located in quite a few states, headquartered out of Oakland, California. And so it's good to see this reputable lab on the back end of Grassroots here. So you're testing, I see that you have quite a few different samples. So are you testing from, how many samples are you doing per bag? I'm seeing you open quite a few bags here.
So each batch of 10 pounds, we take 2 samples. One of those will go immediately for pesticides, heavy metals, molds, yeast, bioburden, terpene content, cannabinoid content. The second is kept for a year as a retain per state law. If there would be any adverse effects with patients in the field, we go back to that sample, retest it to try and identify where the problem occurred.
Which they're doing in food, so I think it's smart. And so do all labs do that, or is that something new? Because I've never heard of.
I can speak for Maryland only,
yeah.
So in Maryland it's state law for all the labs.
Gotcha. And so a lot of labs, and when we work with families and patients and companies, a lot of times they'll test a product when it comes in before they manufacture it into a product, and then they retest it again. I think you were saying you do that here as well, correct?
That's correct. So with Grassroots, they'll be both growers and processors, and so the product will be tested at the end of the grow. It will be tested again once they've processed it into whatever product they're making, whether it be an oil or a balm or whatever it is. That gets a slightly different battery of testing. Some of the same things like potency, but then also we'll look for things like residual solvents that we use to do extractions to make sure that none of that is making it to the patient.
And we are in Maryland with Andrew Cohen, one of the partners of Grassroots Cultivation and Processing Center. And glad to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So in your facility here, in Maryland has so many different laws. One, edibles are not available yet.
Right.
But hopefully one day that you'll be touching on that. Are you doing, I've traveled and toured locations like this and on the West Coast in Oregon. Mm-hmm. They're also doing vaporizers and different types of oils. So will you be doing that here as well?
Yeah, we'll be doing all the regular extraction products except edibles.
Okay. And so with the different extraction, with your we do sublingual tinctures in different formulations.
Sure.
Can you do everything from the acid THCA, CBDA to CBD and THCs?
Yes, absolutely. That's the plan.
Nice. And so with that, is that going to be under the Grassroots name, or would that be under the dispensary name?
No, it'll be all under the Grassroots name. I mean, we operate in multiple states. Yep. We are in, obviously, Maryland. We have one and are under construction in Pennsylvania. Okay. For all 3 of those licenses. We have all 3 of those licenses in Illinois as well. It's widely thought of that Maryland's going to have a very successful and robust program for a number of reasons, one of which is there's a large range of qualifying conditions, including severe pain.
Gotcha.
So for that reason, Maryland is expected to be a great market, and it's already showing that. Yeah. There are over 20,000 patients signed up already. The commission is telling us that they're getting 200 patients every single day applying, and that's not just 5 days a week, that's 7 days a week. Do the math, that's over 70,000 patients a year at that run rate. As a society, as a community, as a world, we're doing an injustice if we take something like cannabis, which has been used for 3,000 years, and not try and figure out more of how it can help people. We know it can help people, but we need to study it, we need to get the research going, we need to learn more about the amazing properties that we all know it has in that plant. We've got to unlock that. Now we know that's going to take some help from the federal government, and just over time, more acceptance by the community.
People want this to roll out in a certain way. I think that's great. I mean, it needs to be fair for the entrepreneurs. It needs to be safe for the people. There's testing. There's so many different aspects of this plant now. I mean, you can dial in your dosage based on percentage of THC, percentage of CBD. So there's also these ancillary industries that are coming along, some of which are going to be carried over into legalization because they've served medical so well. So there's a broad base now to make a lot of progress, but there's still, I think the main thing again for me is the educational. How do I get this knowledge out there, you know, to college students and also to other folks, because there's a lot of stigma, a lot of fear, you know, a lot of misunderstanding essentially.
Are you enjoying the show so far? Are you learning a lot of great information? Do you want to join our movement and support our mission to inform the world on the truth about cannabis? Then please consider supporting our cause by owning this complete series so you can watch it again and share it with a loved one now or in the future. Your support allows us to continue researching the sacred plant and spreading our findings for free. Also, a portion of each sale gets donated to charities that are helping people every day to find relief for their pain and to change the unjust laws so people everywhere can access the plant legally to heal. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. I thank you in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping to change the world.
There's a lot of misinformation, and my goal in the Maryland scheme of things was to make sure there was premier education from around the country and around the world for our state, because we're trying to be different. We're trying to be better. We're trying to take all the mistakes from Colorado and California and Oregon and Washington State and make our state, you know, the premier place for medical cannabis. And so I went to the commission and I said, you know, I happen to know, you know, Americans for Safe Access. I happen to know United Patients Group. I happen to know Patients Out of Time. And I wanted these sources available because people were coming to me with all kinds of crazy notions that they had gotten off the internet. So I have to go back and explain to them, you know, if you're looking at products on the internet, you know, you have to be very, very careful and don't, you know, it's been very frustrating waiting for the program all these years to get on its feet. I had patients coming to me years ago asking me, you know, for protocols they had seen in Maine or whatever, and I'm like, we can't do anything yet. We have nothing yet. We cannot legally tell you that you can do this. You know, we cannot legally help you. And we had patients die waiting.
Wow.
We had cancer patients die waiting, and we had, you know, lots of patients die waiting.
It's sad when you see that, and it's also, you know, you're talking about the different protocols. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Absolutely
not.
And
so how is Maryland, how is it today? I know it's still brand new, but how is it today? Is it a lot easier to work with patients and having legal access, safe legal access here in Maryland with for patients?
The safe legal access is great, and we're so happy that that's available. And a lot of the dispensaries that have been opening have been training their staffs fairly well in the medical aspect of things. It seems that a lot of the training, though, is still strain specific and product specific. And as most people are aware, cannabis is a very individualized therapy. So they need medical guidance to help them look at the drug interactions of any medications they happen to be on.
Is there anything in Maryland right now that's not available to you that you could use?
A lot of the high CBD strains are not available yet. Apparently, a lot of the companies came out with the high THC first. So that's been a little bit of a bummer.
It's a shame because a lot of them think, you know, everyone wants THC, 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 where CBD helps with a lot of patients, and a lot of times CBD doesn't help with a lot of patients where THC is needed. So a formulation of the two.
Right.
Will they be doing that here?
Oh, they're doing a lot of formulations, and they will be doing the ratio proportion medicine that I like to work with. But in the meantime, we've run out of product.
Wow.
We've had to make up something and customize our own blends. I'll look at what's available at a dispensary and talk to my patient about it and what are their goals, and but we had people working really well on a certain formulation, but then they ran out because it's a new market.
You mentioned CBDA earlier. I'm a big fan of CBDA. I'm also just a big fan of THCA. Is THC offered here in Maryland yet?
No, and nor is it available in the district.
Oh, wow.
So for my patients, I have a few seizure patients who need THCA, and I like using THCA for some of the autistic patients, and then for patients with cancer to increase apoptosis, or that's programmable cellular death, I like for them to use all four: CBD, CBDA, THC, and THCA. So for those, because they're not available, either patients have to figure out whether they want to travel to get it, or there's some THCA that's available online. I don't really recommend that. What I do is I have the patients buy some shake or trim, which is kind of the beat up part of the plant, and they can get a mason jar and put all that trim in there and give it some shakes. It takes a while for it to absorb, or they can make an alcohol-based THCA or CBDA if they have the dried plant, and they can do an alcohol extraction, and then again let that, once it's extracted, let it evaporate, and then scrape up the resin, and then add the oil. There are a lot of steps to it, but it's not that difficult. So right now we're still all working with homemade THCA and CBDA.
Over the years, we're seeing the states passing their state laws, and here we are in the United States with a federal prohibition and states trying to do their own thing, and we've got a full state of confusion. No state laws are exactly the same. So for a healthcare professional who many of us are licensed you've got a multi-state license. So in Virginia, I can practice with my Virginia license. I could practice in Maryland, Washington, D.C., some surrounding states with that license. Well, now in Virginia, it's only CBD, which was only for intractable seizures. Now it's for other uses, but only CBD with a low level of THC. In Maryland, they've got a medical cannabis law. In Washington, D.C., they got a medical cannabis law, and it's legal. So just going from state to state, it's very confusing. But the other thing that what we're seeing happening is money, the big picture of money. What we've noticed is we call it the green rush, people coming in for the money, which is a big disappointment, obviously, to patients, because they're in it for the money, and you don't necessarily, I don't know how to tell patients, is that product good or not? Because there have been tests on some products being sold as CBD to find out there is no CBD in it, or not as much as they say. People have had products of cannabis thinking it's one thing, and the danger is the patient thinks they've got something, and they go to another dispensary, they're looking for the same thing. I need this much CBD and this much THC in my cannabis, and they offer them something and it's totally different, and yet the lab test is saying the same thing. So big problem with that. Bottom line is, with all of this confusion, and it's taking so long for this, it's just taking so long to get some kind of unity out there.
This is where I will say my multi-state experience right now has helped. So Virginia's brand new. They are so fresh that, they're down to, you need to fill out this form to say you can legally possess. I mean, it's really basic. Then there's Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, the dispensaries are supposed to have a medical director. And that medical director and pharmacist are supposed to help guide the patient. So my Pennsylvania patient, I made the effort to call their medical director to make sure, I'm sending you this patient with autism. What do you have available? How do you dose? What's your dosing? Just to make sure that everything is lined up so that we don't run into that problem. And so that's where the medical community can help in Maryland. We can help clearly explain what you should expect. how do you take it? When you take it, what is a sign of poor outcome and what's a sign of good outcome? Is it still controlling your symptoms? Is it still helping you? We did it. We got to what we wanted. That's our target. Better outcomes. To get better outcomes, I do think a physician needs to be there to guide it.
Yes.
In California, there's always a need for more guidance.
Yes.
And I felt like over there things went the other way. Because of the lack of support and guidance and the stigma, the medical community stayed away.
Yeah.
That had mal effects, like in terms of not only trust, but how do you then jump in and say, I'm going to provide a safe way for you, but you didn't participate in the whole rollout and development of the whole process? The medical establishment has to take a stronger role in developing this. We can't sit on the sidelines and say, oh yeah, good luck. I hope that works out for you. Here's your certification. That's the wrong approach. You came into me for help. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to follow up with you. We're going to make sure you get the right dose. We're going to make sure you get the right outcome. And if we can get the state to figure this out a little better, it'd be nice to have a medical director and pharmacist at each dispensary. I think the Pennsylvania approach is safer, but then Pennsylvania has other shortfalls. Not every state has rolled this out perfectly. We are in our infancy here.
Well, the mission of Patients Out of Time is to educate healthcare professionals and the public about the therapeutic use of cannabis. So in many ways, my time is spent a lot on just educating, answering phone calls for anybody and everybody and speaking wherever somebody wants to learn about it. But our conference series focuses primarily on the healthcare professional. We clearly have it open to patients, and many patients come, and they come because their healthcare professional doesn't know anything about cannabis. Many of them have been kicked out of doctor's offices or been told they have to go into a drug treatment program if they want to get any more medicine from the healthcare professional. So they come and just to feel, the patients come to feel justified, to learn about it, to network, just to feel better. They've been stigmatized and they don't like it. But our main audience, I would say, is healthcare professionals. And part of that is, as a nurse, I really believe it's our ethical obligation to fight for cannabis. If there are health policies that legislators who have no health background are passing laws and they affect patients negatively, a healthcare professional ethically should not remain silent. And this prohibition of cannabis has been a little too intense because healthcare professionals have just remained silent. They won't say anything. I feel like they put their head in the sand, and I just think it's unethical.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Woody Ryan.
And I'm Brendan McLaughlin. A new bill in the Florida Senate is fueling debate over medical marijuana tonight. Our Ashley Glass is live in Parrish, talking with a family who says they can't wait for the politicians in Tallahassee because this issue is so personally important to them. Ashley?
And it's hitting this home, Brendan. The Jordans live here. They're telling me tonight why this debate over medical marijuana use is right here tonight, just beyond this fence in their backyard.
I'm not going to stop. I can't.
Bob Jordan is angry.
I'm going to finish this thing.
This thing that started with deputies busting in his backyard Monday.
One cop stood over here.
Seizing 23 marijuana plants.
It's real medicine.
And it's for his wife, Kathy, he says, suffering from ALS for 27 years.
Well, I met Kathy and Bob at a speaking event when we were both on stage, and I ended up writing an opinion of mine about why smoked cannabis is a legitimate best medicine for Kathy because of the specific condition that she has, and how I have observed and understood it to help her, and that helps tighten our connection more. So in any neurodegenerative disease, the fact that cannabis has such a tremendously safe profile of use, therapeutic window, and that the basic science shows that it dampens neuroinflammation and overexcitation, that right there shows it should be safe to try and should really be a frontline therapy to try because the side effect profile is remarkably favorable. And there's preclinical research showing that in mice that have models of ALS, that too much free radical formation is specifically helped or lessened by THC and other cannabinoids. That myelin may be protected. Either it may be relevant to ALS and multiple sclerosis both. It probably is. So there's lots of reasons to think it should and could be protective, and to let people try it.
Down here, she smoked a form of cannabis called Mayaca Gold, which the federal government has eradicated. And she said she felt her disease stop, and I did not. I didn't believe her. Nobody did.
And when I went in there, about my third year in there, he started looking at me kind of odd. And then when I went back in 6 months, he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Do you do anything different?" I said, "Well, ask your aide to leave, and I'll tell you." You know, the aide laughed, and I said, "I smoke pot every day." What? I said, "I smoke marijuana every day and a couple of joints. It helps me cough and relaxes my throat muscles and dries up my saliva, and I don't choke." And he said, "Well, take one. I would suggest you never tell anyone this. Don't stop what you're doing. Keep doing it. You got something here, but don't tell anyone. They'll never ever believe you." And that was the best advice I would be a lot better off if I listened to him.
Well, back then too, pot was a big bust. They were putting people in jail for 1 or 2 joints, you know, and that was a big bust. And he said, never tell anybody. They're not going to believe you. I'm not going to write a prescription for you, and just keep quiet about it. But don't stop. He didn't say keep doing what you're doing, but don't stop doing what you're doing.
To look at ALS specifically, and Kathy's situation, and understanding why it's therapeutic for her in a uniquely specific way, it not only may help protect the neuronal pathways and it'd be helpful for prolonging her mobility, and function in life, but in ALS, trouble swallowing and choking is a real problem. And swallowing is a voluntary motor movement. Cannabis dries up saliva. I mean, it has that dry mouth phenomenon that is perhaps more prominent when you smoke it than when you take it in other ways. But in Kathy Jordan's case, with ALS and having excessive, salivation and maybe choking on it, the dry mouth phenomena is therapeutic, and so is coughing to help clear the lungs and of saliva and mucus that might have, accumulated, secretions that accumulate. The bottom line is, to me, the proof is in the pudding. And as a scientist, especially coming from this era of prohibition, we always fall back on this self-protective mantra of we need more research, right? Well, more research is needed. And I'm a researcher, I agree with that, but research should be done by human beings that are using the medicine in the light of day, where it belongs, and N of 1 studies are legit observations. People who have a condition, whether it's ALS or anxiety or cancer, and they have a certain condition and a prognosis, and they use cannabis as medicine, and they have a remarkable therapeutic outcome, that's a clinical success. And statistically, you can call it an anecdote because it wasn't part of a formulated study that have you, figured out into a bell curve, but it's a clinical success. And there actually is a modern movement to sort of reclaim the value of N of 1 studies as clinical outcomes. And in that area, cannabis has just mountains of support that should legitimize people trying it to see if they're going to be a clinical success, whether someone labels it an anecdote or not.
Well, I mean, actually, if I live 4 more years, I will have ALS for 36 years. and I was diagnosed at 36.
That started our journey on activism. And she got active, and we've been saying for however many years it's been now, that the main point we've been trying to make for all these years, that this is medicine. This plant is medicine. This is a miracle plant, you know. And I've heard it said, and I've said it. It has been helping all these other people, and I thought, wow, that's how it works. But there for a long time, I said, nah. I had doubts in mine. I doubted it for a long time. And then we found out about that, and then find out how it works, and then seeing people with stage 4 cancer get healed, and they're saying it's anecdotal. That's the word I don't like. I don't like anecdotal. And we've been screaming for years and years, will somebody please study this plant? Let it be free. Study it, because it's a miracle.
Stephen Hawking just passed away a few days ago, and I think it's possible that Kathy Jordan is the longest surviving diagnosed person with ALS in the world. I don't know that for sure, but she has lived a stunning amount of time for someone with that prognosis and that diagnosis. She has not had the kind of, top of the world class technological, intervention and support that Dr. Hawking did, but nor has she deteriorated as to the state that he did and was in for many years.
What they did is that when they raided the house and took her medication and wanted to put me in jail for 5 years, okay, they wanted to give me a plea deal. And I said, what's that? Am I entitled to a jury trial? And they said, yeah. I said, I want a jury trial. No, we're going to put you in jail. We've got your plants. What would you need a jury trial for? And I said, well, I want a jury trial, because I knew in my heart of hearts that if I could get before a jury and I'm keeping my wife alive, ain't no jury in the world going to convict me, And that's what people wanted to start standing up a little bit. So I stood up, and it was scary, because they said, well, we got you red-handed. We're going to put you in jail. And then we got a piece of paper saying we've reached what's called medical necessity. And they said that Robert Jordan can grow a small amount of cannabis and solely for his white purposes. I said, I can grow a small amount. And they said, yeah, well, the state of Delaware is small, so we'll debate that later, So I filled the yard up.
Actually, April 2nd will be 5 years we've had medical necessity.
Huh? April 2nd will be 5 years we have medical necessity.
What people have to understand, that at the core of the medical cannabis movement, at the core, is the fact that there are not mainstream medications that work for us. If there was a medication that would work for my condition, I would not have been doing this for the last 16 years, right? And as long as science keeps backing up the experience that people like me and my doctors are viewing, then patients are going to push for this option. All right, and it's not a good enough answer anymore for politicians to say that they're uncomfortable.
Hi, this is John Malanca with The Sacred Plant, and today we're in Orange County, California, with Miriam Hope founders Diana Pena and Jeff Kaleri. So thank you for being with us. You guys are a legal medical cannabis manufacturer here in the state of California, in business for the past 5 years, and good to see you guys again. Hear what you do. It's not a one size fits all, and here you have this. Take this bottle. You work with the patients, you work with the doctors and their formulations. So you're not making formulations for patients contacting you. They're having. How does that work?
So as of right now, and this is going to be an issue next year once legalization hits. But as of right now, and how the previous model worked with medical cannabis in California, is we were able to make our own product, which is manufacturer. And we can actually distribute it directly to customers. So basically how we work right now is our patients come to us, we refer them out to our doctors or nurses that know cannabis really well. They've been doing it for years and years. They look over the complete history, what medications they're taking, diagnosis, everything, and they break everything down. Then from there they come up with a kind of like a recommendation, like they recommend let's just say 1-to-1, for example, like 1 part THC to 1 part CBD. And what we can also do as well, which is different from anybody else, is we can actually add special terpenes that'll add benefits to whatever diagnosis they have. So as of right now, we can do all that, which is super beneficial for the clients, because we've actually had clients come to us, trying cannabis for years and years and years, and nothing's working until they came to us. We took some time and we actually, tried different variations of terpenes and ratios until we found that one that worked for them, and now they're having, amazing results. Like I said, with legalization, we're trying to figure out how we can do that, because this whole system is changing, and they've, for us, it's for the worse, because, we're not allowed to actually accommodate that way for patients anymore. Now it has to be just one generic streamlined product that we can't even touch, essentially. So
looking back, during the 2017 election for 2018 results of medical cannabis here in the state of California, would you have voted differently?
I didn't vote for legalization.
I didn't vote for legalization either, because I've seen that it's pushed out the true medical patient in other states.
Yeah.
I've seen that it's pushed out the true, the medical doctors helping patients. People are now going around and saying, we don't need medical advice, and we'll just go and do it ourselves. So I didn't know you voted that way.
I think a lot of people that knew the true medical need of cannabis voted against it. I think the majority of people that voted for it didn't realize what it would actually do and what it would encompass. And it basically crippled the whole medical cannabis industry. Yes, you will be able to get products, generic products, but will they work for patients? Yes or no? Can you customize it? No. They can do it themselves if they know how, but that's the problem, is most patients have no clue how to formulate, how to get these terpenes, how to source them. There's just a lot of stuff that go into what we do.
But it's also access. There's people that live in cities that don't have dispensaries. How are they going to get their medicine?
Exactly. So right now, under the new law, you have to be licensed to manufacture, which is not cheap. These licenses are going to be millions and millions of dollars to big industries, and that's the other issue we're running into, is we're now having to compete with companies that are just multi-million dollar companies that we can't even compete with, that are going for these licenses because they know it's big money. Majority of them are looking for recreational use, because that's obviously where the money is.
Exactly.
Medical, there's money to be made there, but it's not as much as the recreational market. So one of our obstacles is we have to compete against these big companies that are coming in and grabbing these licenses. That's kind of the hurdles we're running into right now with being able to give our products out there so patients can access it. It's quite a challenge right now for us.
There's just, the taxes are they're just way too high. 30% on a purchase is just, it's just too high, But definitely, I think with the medical side of it, like I said, when they wrote this law, I don't think they definitely, in my opinion, I feel did not write it with the type of patients that we deal with. I don't think they realize that we wean kids off of medications and solely rely on cannabis. And so you have these kids that only rely on cannabis. So what's going to happen when they can't afford this anymore? Or not only just can't afford it, when they can't access it? Are their parents going to have to get in their, cars with these kids, with these special need kids in their wheelchairs or all this stuff, and drive 7 hours to either Southern California or San Francisco? What are they supposed to do?
Big story is the taxation. The big story is how we've legalized it, but we're taxing it out of existence. The big story is how small businesses are being forced to close because the cost of getting a permit is too high. That's the story. And in California, we hear our cities and our regulators listening, and we do expect over the course of 2018, the taxes will go down. There's a bill before our legislature right now to cut the cultivation tax for a couple of years, to lower the excise tax for a couple of years. In Oakland, we're working to lower the municipal business license tax, because you just can't make a business like this. And you definitely can't stop the underground economy, which is the goal, to stop the arrests and to get everything above board and taxed and regulated and safe. You can't do it like this. It's an abject failure.
So with all these other states coming on, Colorado, most recently California with the adult use, recreational use in Colorado and Washington State and Oregon State. Are you a fan of that? Are you seeing that it's pushing out the medical patient? Are you seeing it's pushing out the medical doctor for patients to go and get guidance from a medical professional before they use medical cannabis? Can you touch up on that?
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings about it. I mean, I think, people make this assumption that if cannabis is legal everywhere, then there's no need for the fight for medical cannabis. Yeah. And one of the biggest reasons that patients are not using medical cannabis in states where it's legal is that they can't afford it. Yeah. And there is no possible scheme in which a recreational market is going to get insurance coverage for this medication. And that's sort of the light touch of how I feel. In Washington State, the recreational industry pushed out the medical cannabis industry, shut it down. Yeah. It shut it down. And I think the thing that seems so silly to me is that I know how our people use this medication. I have to use cannabis no matter what, 4 times a day, every day. And that is a much bigger devotion of a consumer than someone who likes to use cannabis when they go to a concert. And so I think it's very short-sighted for companies to feel like they need to abandon medical for recreational.
For medical, I want there to always be a medical. That's one of the things that I'm concerned about. I don't want medical to just go the way, well, we've got legal now, so what do we need medical? Well, medical is about research. It's about really exploring these things in a deep way. It's a different model of medicine. It's not necessarily about surgery. It's not necessarily about addicting drugs. It's about managing yourself through these other alternative substances.
What do you say to patients who are here watching us who don't have legal access? They live in an illegal state. They're looking for hope, one last hope. So what do you say about the laws that, like you said, that not really protect the laws against for medical professionals in recommending medical cannabis? But what about laws for patients?
Well, I think we both agree they're ridiculous, and we always tell patients when they are scheduling the appointment that they're in a state that doesn't allow it, so there's going to be some challenges. But we're Americans. We're going to push. Yeah. And where there's a will, there's a way. And if you have a child that's suffering, let me tell you other things people have done. Yeah. And I'll tell them that they sometimes will come out. It used to be easier when California made it, but people can use leases. Yeah. Recreational is available now. It's available in a lot of other states. I have a lot of patients just get CBD, THC, and THC as shatter in Colorado, and then tell them how to mix it up and then make into 2-dose capsules. So that's probably the most common thing we do. And now it's, in like New Jersey and New York, how they figured this out is, they must have been the dumbest people ever. New Jersey is all bud. New York is all oil. Yeah. Now, they don't make very much THCA oil in most places because it's a bit of a challenge. Although in California, it's certainly becoming more common. So often the THCA will just tell people to take a half a gram of raw bud, crush it, and
for patients that don't have access to herbal cannabis, dronabinol becomes a real option. And it's almost never as effective as the herb, again, because it doesn't have these entourage compounds in it. It doesn't have all the synergy of the phytoconstituents, but it is working with the endocannabinoid system because it's THC. So I do prescribe it fairly often in my practice, typically for people that are in nursing homes or in group homes, assisted living facilities, where they would have no access to herbal cannabis. I also use it for people that are crossing state lines or going outside of the country because it's a prescription drug that would be legal to travel with.
Couldn't it just be allowed in the whole United States and you wouldn't have to worry about going from state to state? Or I think that I should be able to have a right to attain that medication, and other people should too.
Well, I know that everybody needs access to the sacred plant for a fact, because I've seen it walking through our doors of our apothecary over and over again. People that have tried traditional medicines that haven't provided them with their symptom relief use our sacred plant and come back. And I watched one lady take a puff off a vaporizer. She was in her 70s. And the next thing you know, they asked her, how's your pain? She goes, what? Oh, I didn't even think about it. I don't have any right now. So why not provide that? Why not allow people access to our sacred plant? And I call it our sacred plant because right now we have it here in this state, but in Oklahoma it's not available for them people. They're going to go to jail for life for touching the sacred plant. Just for touching it, for having possession of it. Just a quarter ounce, they're going to go to jail. For me, the amount of cannabis that I use would be many jail sentences per day for an individual in some of these other states. So yes, it should be available. The sacred plant needs to be available to everybody.
Can you share with our listeners and viewers how to have this conversation with their representative? A lot of people don't know how to do it.
Yeah, so we actually have a whole series on our website that I actually wrote a 400-page manual on being an advocate for medical cannabis.
Wow.
So it includes the ABCs of citizen lobbying.
Okay.
There's videos, worksheets. You can also come to our conference because we also train advocates there. But I think it's important for people to understand that it's not a politician's job to come to D.C. and to defend the laws of that state. It is a politician's job to come to D.C. and to defend their constituents and represent their constituents. So if they do not hear from you, then they have no reason to pay attention to us here in D.C.
If you want to see cannabis and hemp stay free, you have to get involved. You have to sign petitions. You have to go after your congressmen, your senators, and you have to make your voice heard. There are so many millions of people that are turning to cannabis for medicinal help. So if you live in a jurisdiction, a state somewhere where they're just not awake to this yet, you need to tell your representative, you need to tell your congressman, you need to tell your senator, or you need to move out and take your tax dollars away until they understand that this regressive ideology is over. The gig is up. Let people be healthy. Let people use this medicine to heal.
Thank you for joining us for episode 5, Accessing the Sacred Plant, the Unjust Laws, and How to Navigate Them. As you heard, amazing progress is being made in making sure that all patients have access to the sacred plant. But we still have a long way to go. There are many states who don't even have a medical cannabis program. That's why we need your help. Our mission is to educate people about the true potential of the sacred plant to save lives. By purchasing the series and sharing it widely, you are becoming part of the solution. Millions of people desperately need this information to safely and effectively treat the disease that they're suffering from. You could help us reach these people by sharing this video series far and wide. Coming up in episode 6, extending the quality and quantity of life for us and our beloved pets. We'll explain the sacred plant's wellness benefits for seniors and how to find products that are sourced from hemp. Episode 6 also covers how to use the sacred plant for pets and animals. You'll meet Lucky Sam the horse, Stuart the dog, and Trebuchet the cat. All these animals are being treated with the sacred plant and are thriving. Veterinarian Gary Richter will tell us about the latest studies about using cannabis to treat animals. It's going to be a fantastic episode that you will not want to miss. Until then, God bless you and your loved ones. I invite you to join our movement, support our mission, and to help us save lives. We're a small company that's committed to the truth and to helping humanity. Since we don't have the unlimited resources that Big Pharma has, we need to work together to educate and empower more people about the healing benefits of the sacred plant. When you support our mission by owning the complete series today, you allow us to continue to research, interview, expose, and share this knowledge with the world for free, just like we're doing right now. If you learned something, been inspired, want to watch it again, share it with a loved one, or just love how it feels to support a good cause, consider owning the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Examined today. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. I thank you in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping to change the world.